So our next panel, I'm already stressed out about homework. You need me to solve a mystery too, features authors Nick Brooks and Karen M. McManus discussing their books Promise Boys and One of Us is Back. So they will take questions after our discussion, so start thinking of what you would like to know. Nick and Karen will also be signing their books from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Now let's meet our guests. Karen McManus is a #1 New York Times and international best-selling author of young adult thrillers. Her work includes the One of Us is Lying series, which was turned into a television show on Peacock and Netflix, as well as the standalone novels Two Can Keep a Secret, The Cousins, You'll Be the Death of Me, and Nothing More to Tell. Karen's critically acclaimed award-winning books have been translated into 42 languages and have sold more than 7 million copies worldwide. Welcome, Karen. Nick Brooks is an award-winning author and filmmaker from Washington, D.C. Brooks' first feature film, We Were Born Kings, is currently in development with Mandalay Pictures. Before becoming a filmmaker, he was an educator working with at-risk youth, and many of his stories are colored by his experiences with the children and families of his community. Brooks is the author of Nothing Interesting Ever Happens to Ethan Fairmont, and his latest work, the critically acclaimed Promise Boys, which is a 2023 Boston Globe Hornbook Award honoree. So please again help me welcome Nick and Karen. Thank you for joining us today. So the theme for the festival this year is Everyone Has a Story. I'm hoping that first off you will share a bit of your stories with us. Would you share your journey into becoming a writer? And I'll ask Karen to respond first.
Sure. So it's a long story, but I'll try to make it short. I always wanted to be an author. Ever since I was 8 years old, I wrote my first book. I told everyone that's what I was going to be. But as I got older, it got harder to finish things because I was more ambitious, but I didn't have the skill to back it up. And I thought, okay, I guess it's just not for me. And it's just a hobby, and I'll put it aside. Into college, got a job, got married, had a child, really didn't think about writing at all. And then this is the sad part of the story. My husband passed away when our son was 3 years old. And of course, that was devastating. And he was so young, and I thought a lot about all the things he didn't get to do. And I thought, if there's something I wanted to do, I should probably do it. And I thought, well, I always wanted to write a book. But I wasn't going to write a book then. That was not the time. But 5 years later, I was traveling for business in like a better headspace, and I stopped in the airport bookstore because I had nothing to read and picked up The Hunger Games. And I got obsessed. And for the first time in a long time, I had an idea. And it was a very bad dystopian knockoff of The Hunger Games. So it wasn't a good idea, but I did finish it. And I met a writing community, and I started to learn what it takes to be published. And then I wrote another book, which was better, but still not good enough. And then when I was driving to work one day, the theme song from The Breakfast Club came on. And I thought, what if somebody died in detention? And that became One of Us is Lying.
Very cool. So writing is almost a form of resilience for you, really.
Yeah.
Nick, we'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, absolutely. It also is a long story, but I'll try to make it quick.
Okay.
For me, hip hop really changed my life, and it's cool that we just celebrated the 50th year of hip hop yesterday. But as a young kid, I would study artists like Tupac Shakur, DMX, Jay-Z, and they were poets. And I read a book, Makes Me Want to Holler, by a gentleman named Nathan McCall. I would read mystery novels by Walter Mosley. And these were guys that I looked up to. I saw that they were telling stories that, represented my community, represented where I came from. And I fell in love with writing. And so I started writing and performing hip hop around 14. And journeys go, I hit my bumps in the road and figured, okay, this might not work. And so I started teaching. I started teaching in Southeast DC, taught at a charter school, and again, I ran into this realization that there weren't a ton of texts that my students can make text-to-self connections to, because the books just weren't talking about their community. They didn't feature characters that looked like them. And so that's when I said, okay, I'm a storyteller. I know I'm a storyteller. I know I love writing because I came out of this hip-hop journey. Let me try to write children's books. And so I self-published my first children's series. And I would read it to the students. And they started to pick up the characteristics that I was trying to teach them through these books. And my principal noticed that, and my charter network ended up picking up some of the books. But anyway, long story short, trying to move along, that took me to Dallas, Texas, where I was doing some consulting with my books, and it still wasn't quite doing the thing that I wanted to do. You know, it still was like this itch to be, I don't know, just uber creative. Like I wanted to do more, and so I turned to filmmaking. I saw a film by a guy named Ryan Coogler. It's called Fruitvale Station. I love the film. Again, it's something that hit me because, again, it's representation, right? Like I saw the story of Oscar Grant, and it hit me. And so I looked up Ryan, see what he did. So he went to a film school. He went to the school called USC out in California, Los Angeles. So I said, maybe I'll try that. So I made my first film, applied to USC, and got in and did really well. And I received, you know, a lot of people told me I couldn't do it. You know, they said that that's the #1 film school. You're not going to be able to get in there. People really told me that. And but I tried it. I got in, made some films. That went really well. Again, I graduated in 2020, and you know, pandemic hits, right? So now I'm, you know, knee deep in debt. Failed rapper. The film industry is shut down along with the rest of the world, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. But again, for me, it's you know, I know I can write. You know, I know I can tell a story. I knew I wrote those children's books you know, a few years prior. So I said, well, let me try that again. And so I started writing. You know, like I said, I taught in the charter school. Promise Boys is set in the charter school. I also came up through DCPS, and I took a lot of my experiences from being an educator, from being a student here, and put those in Promise Boys, and also thought, what if the principal was murdered? You know, you know,
Great mind.
You know what I mean? So, you know, but so yeah, I mean, again, it's a long story. I think for me, a lot of it comes down to like perseverance, you know, grit. These are the things I would tell my students, and I had to really put those in action, and you know, it paid off.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's neat that you've been able to use those experiences as a teacher, and it's also neat that the needs of your students help to inspire what you're doing. That's great. So you both are known for writing these incredible mysteries for teens. What is it that you enjoy about writing mysteries for teens? Yeah. We'll start with Karen.
Okay. So I really love writing about young people. It's just such an interesting time of life. You're figuring out who you are, who you want to be, and emotions are really close to the surface, and you're experiencing lots of things for the first time. And I think if you couple that with a really high-stakes plot, then hopefully you have a page turner. And what I like to do is try to send my characters on a journey. So there's something they need to figure out, you know, about themselves. It's holding them back from being the person they're meant to be. And they cannot solve this mystery until they solve that part of themselves. So my hope is that by the time you get to the last page, they're doing something that would have seemed impossible on the first page because they've gone through that arc.
Cool. So you like the arc of the growth. That's
I do.
Neat. And Nick? Yeah,
for me, I love mystery. They have really strong what I call engines, right? Like the thing that is propelling the story. I'm big on plot, also character, world, all of these things, but I love a really compelling plot. And so even growing up, the mysteries were always the stories that grabbed me because it was engaging my mind, trying to figure out what was going on, trying to pick up the clues that were, you know, hidden under the surface. And so that's why I really enjoy writing mysteries. I think why I like writing them for young people is because, again, growing up here, you know, it's a population that I work closely with. You know, before I was an educator, I worked with a nonprofit called Concerned Black Men, where I would push into different schools around the city, working with black and brown boys specifically, you know. And again, I think it's a population of students that's a little bit underserved, you know. They fly under the radar. And so for me, once being a young black man who was sitting in the same seat, you know, in front of the kids that I'm teaching, I didn't have those books. So I guess for me, I'm writing the thing that I didn't have, the thing that I wanted to see when I was a kid. Yeah. And then also somewhere in me, I'm still a kid, you know, and so I love writing those voices. Like you read Promise Boys and it's J.B. Trey Ramone, like these are voices that voices that I'm still hearing, you know. Those were some of the most fun moments in my life. You become an adult and then everything's all serious. So I just like, you know, I enjoy writing for them because I think that's, you know, I know that's what was needed too, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Nick, we'll start with this one for you since you talked about some of the characters. The characters in both of your novels have unique voices and backgrounds. How did you ensure that their perspectives are authentic and relatable, especially when you consider the range of experiences that the characters are coming from? We'll start with you, Nick.
Yeah. For me, I mean, it started in the pre-writing for me, in the ideating. You know, I like to write about things that I know because I know those are topics I'll be able to approach authentically. So for me, it really began before even words were on the page, as far as me making sure I'm tapping into these voices and characters in an authentic way. So again, working with these exact students, these students are just amalgamations of all the kids that I've worked with, you know, and pieces of myself. In Promise Boys, there's over 32 perspectives, you know, but all of them are people that I've come in contact with, whether it was Lunch Lady Adams or, you know, Unc on the corner or, you know, whoever it is. These are all people that I know, people that I've seen in the city. And so these are real experiences. And so for me, that's where it starts. When I'm first ideating, first doing my pre-writing, I want to make sure that I'm entering from a place that I feel like I can enter authentically. And then from there is research, you know, making sure, you know, I talk about, it was a couple bus routes I had to look up to make sure I was getting it right. You know what I'm saying? Just because I wanted to be authentic. I wanted to make sure that I was tapping into perspectives that I knew. And again, I wanted to connect and resonate with the kids and the readers. So I want them to read the book, pick up the book, and understand, like, oh, a kid from D.C., he's really from D.C., he wrote this. And so when they read it, they can say, I can do this too. Yeah.
Karen, how do you keep those characters authentic and relatable from the One of Us is Lying series?
So for me, you know, I wrote 4 characters, all first-person point of view. And it didn't make sense to me that all those characters would look and think like me. You know, that's not the world I live in. That's not the world my readers live in. It's not the world I wanted to reflect. But obviously, I'm outside my lane for some of these characters. So with the character of Bronwyn, I decided to make her half Colombian because my sister's husband is Colombian. So she's inspired by my niece because I felt like even though that's not my lived experience, I'm very close to theirs. And then for Cooper, who's gay, I relied on a lot of good friends, and then later with my publisher, sensitivity readers. And you know you're never gonna capture the experience as authentically for every reader, but you just hope to get close enough that it resonates with some readers.
Yeah, you make the effort. That's great.
I want to ditto the sensitivity readers as well, because Ramon is Salvadorian, and in my book, and same thing, we had a couple sensitivity readers just to, you know, make sure we were hitting everything. But I remember growing up, some of my closest friends were Salvadorian, and to your point, I wanted to at least be adjacent, you know, so ditto.
Yeah, they're very valuable, especially if you're writing outside of your own experience. That's cool. So Karen, when you began writing One of Us is Lying, did you know that you had a trilogy ahead of you? Were you already thinking about how far you were going to take the Bayview crew?
No. I wrote it as a standalone, and that's what I thought it would be. Okay. And I do not recommend writing a series like this because it's very inefficient, and you kind of write yourself into a corner. If I had known One of Us is Lying was going to be a series, I probably would have left it more open-ended, more of a cliffhanger, perhaps. And I wouldn't have taken 6 years to finish it. But it was just such an extraordinary response from readers, unexpected for me and for my publisher. And they kept asking, are you gonna write any more? And at first I said, no, it's done. I'm done telling those stories. But then I thought, well, maybe I could bring a side character in, tell it from her perspective, and surround her by some new characters. And that felt like a good next step. So that became One of Us is Next. And then One of Us is Back is so interesting because it came from a plot thread that I actually had to cut out of my very first draft of One of Us is Lying. When I got my agent, she's like, this is great, I think we can sell this, but there's this little side plot that's very distracting, and she was right. But it was an exploration of like motive and backstory between some key characters. And for me, I always felt like it needed to be there somehow, and I was sorry to lose it. And then I thought, well, could I weave that little thread into something bigger, bring it into the present, and make it a whole book? So even though I did not plan to write 3 books, I do feel like with this book, I've told the full story.
Great, great. So it became a trilogy by demand almost.
It did, yeah.
That's cool. So the trilogy is known for these unexpected plot twists and turns, which keep the readers guessing until the very end. How do you approach crafting these intricate and unpredictable mysteries you write?
I wish I had a good answer for that, because then I would do it better every time. It feels like I'm starting fresh. I don't know, I tend to start with like a big idea, like, oh, Breakfast Club, but there's a murder. But I don't know what that means. And then I go character, like who's in the room, and why, and what are they hiding? And then I start getting into plot. And I do try to plot pretty closely, but I find it changes all the time when I write. And occasionally even the whodunit changes.
So speaking of whodunits, how has our collective fascination with true crime been an influence on your writing, if at all?
Still me?
Yes,
Okay.
still you. Sorry about that.
I mean, I share that fascination, I think, but you know, it's sort of this fine line, right? Is that these are real people, you know, this is their life. And it's a terrible loss that they have suffered. So I don't base my books on anything in real life. And I know colleagues who do it and do it really well and very sensitively, so it's not like you can't do it. But I think for me, it's just, I need that sort of fresher perspective of this is something that could happen, but it's not something that has happened, to my knowledge.
So Nick, the next few questions are for you. You have dedicated Promise Boys to the boys of Chocolate City. Would you share a little with us about this dedication and your choice to center DC's Black and Latino boys in Promise Boys?
Yeah, again, it's just something that was on my heart, you know. I'm from the city. I was one of these boys. And again, I didn't have that book. I didn't have that dedication. And, you know, I'm curious how that would have changed, you know, I'm sitting here, so I'm doing okay. But, like, again, when I was working with these kids, it's just some of the things that I would see were heartbreaking. You know, some of the things that they said about themselves were heartbreaking. And it just changed my life. You know, working with the boys of DC changed my life. And I guess I kind of made it my mission to give back to them and inspire them as much as they've inspired me. And so that's just me trying to pay on that promise.
So in Promise Boys, you explore mental health, societal pressures, family conflicts, gangs, juvenile justice, all sorts of issues. What message or takeaway do you hope that readers would gain from Promise Boys?
Yeah, for the young readers, it's something that, you know, I hope that when they read Promise Boys, they're basically empowered to tell their own story. They're empowered to hopefully gain vocabulary through this book that can help them advocate for themselves. And so that's the big takeaway. I think for the adult readers, I also want to examine how we educate these boys. How are our charter schools, how are our public school systems set up in low-income communities? These are questions that I want us to ask, things I want us to explore, because as you can see, there's a parallel between Promise Prep and prison, right? And we have this whole school-to-prison pipeline. And so for me, it was a little bit about putting the medicine in the candy, so to speak, and hopefully sparking a conversation around education reform and how are we treating our boys? Are we being too hard on them? Are we, doing them a disservice in some of these places? If you haven't read Promise Boys, there's certain things where, you know, and I've seen this in schools, you know, kids have to walk with their hands behind their back. You know, they have to walk on blue lines through the hallways. They can't speak. Cafeterias are silent. You know, is all of these very oppressive things that are happening in these schools, and people just won't know unless you've been in them. And so for me, just putting that in Promise Boys is something that I hope, you know, adult readers take away. And then, like I said, for the young readers, by putting it in the book and having the boys, JB, Ramon, Trey, discuss it, it's giving the kids vocabulary to advocate for themselves and to tell their own story.
Yeah. So that leads right into my next question, which was knowing as a former educator, knowing that you have a background as a former educator, I can't help but wonder if you were making a statement on school culture with Promise Boys, and if so, what is that statement?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, again, I don't know if I'm necessarily making a statement. I'm putting it all out there for people to read, for people to take in, and you can ask yourself the question: is this fair? Is this right? You know what I mean? And when you ask those, when you really have to grapple with those questions, you'll come to an answer and you'll figure it out, and then hopefully that changes, the work that you want to do. Particularly if you work in education and you read this book and you're like, man, I see these exact same things in my own school, So that's really what it is.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so now I have questions for both of you again. One of the things that both of your books have in common is sharing perspectives from multiple narrators, so readers see the events from different characters' points of view. What led you to choose this storytelling technique, and how do you think it enhances the overall experience for your readers? And Karen, if you'd respond first.
Yeah, as soon as I got the idea, I thought it had to be told from the perspective of the students who were in the room, all of them. But I had never written multi-POV before. And I think I struggled initially making the voices distinct. And the feedback that I got when I shared early pages was, you should pick one character and just tell it from their point of view. Excuse me. And so I tried that. For 2 chapters, I wrote it from Bronwyn's perspective, and it did not work. Didn't work at all. Like, no, I can't do this. But I think what they're really telling me is the voices aren't distinct enough, and I have to make them more distinct. So that was when I did a really deep dive on the characters, and I started making playlists for all of them with songs that represented them to me, and that's what I would listen to when I wrote them. And I did lots of little different exercises and like writing the same paragraph from different voices. And so I think I got it there. And I feel like it does enhance the experience for readers because there's more possibility that there's someone they're going to relate to if you have multiple perspectives. And as a mystery writer, it's great because you can take people to the edge of discovery and then, oh no, someone else's perspective.
Yeah.
You'll just have to wait.
Okay, so I know the audience is curious, as I am. Can you tell us something that's on Bronwyn's playlist?
Oh, yeah, well, part of it is on Spotify.
Okay.
So you could search my name and you would find it, but it's not the full character playlist. So for example, Addie, at the time, that song Stitches by Shawn Mendes was everywhere, and it's like the ultimate heartbreak song, and she was going through heartbreak. So every time I hear that, I am thrown back into Addie's head.
Cool.
Yeah, the multiple POV works really, really well, with Mystery, and we see that, it's like Agatha Christie, right? It's like, all these different characters, you're seeing all these different things from different people's perspective. And for me, the interesting thing is you can't trust anything because everybody has a POV and it's all introduced, so it's all different. It's a great way to hide secrets. It's a great way to, have characters have revelations. And like Karen said, you can have a character on the brink of a revelation and then leave the audience, on the edge of their seat by switching to a different POV. So it's a great tool. I read a book, How It Went Down, which was a big influence in Promise Boys and how it was formatted and structured. And yeah, it's for a mystery writer, it's like, it's to be honest, it's kind of a cheat code. Really is what it is, like a cheat code, because again, you're able to hide and misdirect and present red herrings so easily or not easily, but effectively, because again, everybody's POV is introduced and you don't know what to trust.
Yeah. Okay, so talking a little bit more about craft, as accomplished writers, what advice would you give to aspiring writers, especially those that are interested in the mystery and thriller genres? We'll start with Karen.
So the first thing is read a lot. I had never tried writing a mystery before One of Us Is Lying, but I had read so many. I think everything Agatha Christie has ever written, Stephen King's entire category also, and it was always my favorite genre. So I felt like I had an intuitive sense of what was required, even though my craft still had to catch up with that. So definitely read widely. And the other thing I always tell aspiring writers is to let someone else tell you no. Because when I gave up writing as a teen, that was me just deciding I wasn't good enough. I didn't even try. And then once I started writing again and putting my work out there, I got told no a lot. Like we all do, hundreds and hundreds of times. But it's not failure, it's actually progress. So let someone else tell you no.
That's good advice.
Yeah, and the first thing is read. The second thing is write. You have to write. It's a muscle. You have to practice it. That is what helps you get better. I know it's easier said than done. The blank page can be daunting, but start with smaller stories. Maybe just tell yourself, okay, I want to get through half the page today. Maybe I just I want to finish a whole page today, and just make it in increments. But you have to write. And for me, I think coming up as a hip hop artist, I had practiced writing just words so much that I was able to transition from that to filmmaking to, I was able to transition easier simply because I had just practiced writing words so much. And so 100% make sure you're reading and make sure you're writing and keep doing it. You're gonna write badly, as they say, and have somebody that you trust, that you trust their opinion. Let them read your work, let them give you feedback. Writing is 100% rewriting, so don't be afraid of the process. You know what I mean? But I would say, in addition to reading, you just have to write.
Right. So most aspiring writers would ask, how do you stay motivated? And if you encounter writer's block, how do you work through it?
Yeah.
I'll ask both of you that. Karen?
So for me, it's kind of two-pronged. Like, if something's not working in a book, it doesn't matter. It's not necessarily writer's block, because I'm still writing, but it doesn't feel right, and I have to take a step back. This is something I had to learn, by the way, because with Two Can Keep a Secret, I just wrote through it, and then I finished the first draft of that book, and I instantly hit delete, because it was so bad. I was like, no one can see this, ever. And then I wrote it again, the exact same way, because I did not learn, and that was also bad. And I was like, maybe it's not as bad as I think. So I showed it to my agent, and she's like, no, it's bad. So then I was like, okay, we need to change gears here. Something's not working. And we brainstormed and did these character worksheets and tried to really focus in on the story I wanted to tell. And then I took a break. Mm-hmm. And then I looked at art, and I binged Netflix, and I listened to music, and I took walks, and I just let it percolate in the back of my mind. And when I started writing again, I felt like that click. I was like, okay, I get it. I know what the story is now. So, but other times, I'm just not ready to start. It's like that blank page,
yep.
And it's the longer you let it stay blank, the more intimidating it is. Mm-hmm. So I just force myself to write something and remind myself this does not have to stay. You just have to get moving.
Okay. So you kind of give yourself the freedom to do something else, and then, or to know the difference between when it's writer's block or when you really weren't ready.
Right, when you're fundamentally, the story's not there.
Yeah. And Nick?
Yeah, same, going on walks, listening to music, just finding something else creative to fill my creative meter. As far as how do I stay motivated, I'm just I just love to create, you know what I mean? I don't know what else I'd be doing. I gotta work. So I just had two twin daughters. They just turned 2 in February, so that's a huge motivator for me, looking at them. And but yeah, it's something that I've always done. I've always been a creative, and I don't know. I just love to do it. And so for me, if it's not writing, it's making music. It's looking at art. I cannot draw, so it's definitely not making art. But looking at art, going to a museum. Even just vibing, going to maybe a nice restaurant or something, just catching a vibe, and then that helps me feel that creative meter, and I go back at it. But my process is interesting. I usually start with a sentence, or some people call it a log line. That's where I start. Just again, concept. What is the concept of this? What's the high level plot? I'll start with a log line, then I'll go to a synopsis, and then I'll go to an outline. I can't really write without an outline. For me personally, I need an outline to write from, because the pantsers, as they call them, is a term I just learned in this journey. But sometimes you can write yourself into a corner, and so for me, that's my process. If I'm hitting the wall, basically I say that to say if I'm hitting the wall, I go back to my outline. I look at my outline, and that kind of is my roadmap. What in my outline isn't working, and then that helps me kind of move pieces around versus having hundreds of pages and trying to move it around within the text. I have an outline that'll help me reorient myself and figure out where to go next.
Yeah. So you're an organized writer.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to ask you both to look back a little bit at your career so far, and could you share with us one of the most rewarding moments of your career as a writer? Is there a particular reader response or feedback that stands out for you? And we'll start with Nick.
Actually, yes, I know, and this was really, really early. This was when Promise literally first came out. I was at, what was I? I think I was at Woodson, H.D. Woodson. And I was doing in the class, in the classroom, giving a presentation, and there was a kid, big kid. He was like sitting in the back, and I'm doing my thing, and when I asked for questions, he raises his hand. He asked me a question, and me and him talk, and he asked a few more questions throughout the thing. But then afterwards, a teacher came up to me and said, "Mr. Brooks, that kid never speaks. Like, that kid never speaks. It's a reluctant reader. And he was the first person in line to pick up a book. Came, shook my hand, we chopped it up, and the teachers were like, "Yo, you don't know." They're like, "You really don't know. Like, that's the kid. He doesn't speak, and when he does, it's not nice." But that felt so good because again, it just affirmed like purpose for me. Like, oh, I'm here for a reason. I'm here to connect with that kid, and he was the first person in line to pick up the book, and he was like, "I'm gonna read this." And so for me, that was like really, really rewarding. Yeah.
That's the kid you wrote it for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Karen, you and I were talking a little bit about reluctant readers earlier too. Is that rewarding for you? And then also, is there another rewarding moment you want to share?
That's one of my favorite things to hear, is that kids who don't always like to read like my books. Because I think if you like one book, you're going to like more books, and you're going to be more motivated to seek them out. Maybe books like the one that you like, or maybe you even branch out even further. So that's really rewarding. And I say, there's been so many wonderful reader reactions. I remember one in particular because it happened early on, like one of the first events I went to, and there was this young woman with beautiful purple hair, and I said, "Oh, you have Addie hair," because in the book, Addie chops off her hair and dyes it purple. And she says, "I know, I did it for Addie." She's like, and I got rid of my friends who were mean to me, and now I have new friends like Addie.
Wow.
Like, oh my God.
Wow, that's neat. That's neat. So for the folks that are into your work right now, can you share a little bit about what you're currently working on? Karen, can you give us a peek into your upcoming projects or any future literary plans?
Yeah, so I am putting the finishing touches on what's going to be my 8th book, which is like, what is time?
Wow.
This is going to be another standalone. I call it my con artist Parent Trap. I was watching The Parent Trap, and I was like, what if they're con artists? And lo and behold, now it's a book. And it's not exactly like that, but there is like this interesting backstory between the two characters, and there's a heist, and there's still a murder, so it's like a heist/murder mystery. Most complicated book I've ever written, and I think I should be able to share more details about it in the fall, but that'll come out, I think, probably summer 2024.
All right.
There we
look
go.
forward to that.
Yeah.
Nick, what you got coming?
Oh, man, let me see. So I'm working on my next YA. It's a standalone mystery. I don't think I can say too much about it. And I'm also working on like 2 TV shows that I'm creating an EP in. One is at Netflix, one is at CW, YA shows. But right now we're on strike, so they kind of it's kind of halted. And then I also have a feature film called We Were Born Kings that takes place in DC. It's a father-son story, also inspired actually by one of my experiences with a student. But I'm in development for that. Again, on strike right now, but I think we might have actually just secured financing for that. So a lot of things across different platforms, but hopefully I can share more in the coming months.
Oh, that is amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you for answering my questions, both of you, but I am sure there are some folks in the audience who have questions. So we've got mics on either side here. If you want to make your way towards a mic, we will have an opportunity for Q&A. All right, we'll start on the right here.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I'm a big fan of your book, Karen. One of Us's line got me out of a really bad reading slump, and my friend Vera is obsessed with you. And I
Tell her I said hi.
I will. She will die. I was just wondering early in your talk, because I also sort of want to be an author maybe when I get older. You mentioned that when you were 8 years old, that's sort of when you were like, I want to be an author. So I was wondering if there was a particular book or experience or person who showed you when you were so young that you really wanted to be an author?
Yeah, it was actually my second grade teacher. She gave us an assignment to write a story. And that was like revolutionary to me. Like, I could write a story because I loved to read, but it never occurred to me that I could write. And so I sat down and I just had a blast writing that story. And she noticed. And she encouraged me to keep doing it. And she kept encouraging me all the way through grade school, even when she wasn't my teacher. She's like, "Are you writing? What are you writing?" And in fact, I thank her in the acknowledgement of One of Us is Lying.
Thank you so much.
Teachers,
I hear
man.
so many stories from writers about that one teacher who
Yeah.
kept them in the craft. That's neat. Okay, we'll go to the left.
So my question is for Nick. Hi, I'm Jessie. I work with adult literacy. So I work with people who did not earn their high school diploma. I'm getting goosebumps. Your story, like, these are the people, these are my students, and I'm the instructional specialist for it.
Yeah.
Would you possibly in the future write a story about maybe a family when they earn their GED? Because everyone's like, it's just a GED. I'm like, no, it's not. These people are holding down 2 jobs, raising kids, earning their high school diploma. Do you think that's...
Are you pitching me an idea now?
You would be the person to put this in writing, or trajectory, because it's like, okay, so the people who don't graduate high school, beyond, you can do it.
100%. No, I mean, I think that's a great story to tell, and it's certainly an important one, I mean...
You would be the person. I'm just saying, you would be the person to research it. I would be like, I was like, oh, he's the guy.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
So, but,
and I appreciate the work that you're doing as well.
But that is, you were saying some parts of DC, I'm like, oh my gosh, one of my students who moved to Maryland is right from these schools. But thank you for your books, and thank you for making, the young adults have something to read that is for them. So,
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, I am also an educator. I've been an educator for the past 5 years, and I actually teach English language arts in middle school, so I love hearing what you're talking about. My question is for Nick. You talked a little bit about how your books are kind of highlighting a lot of the realities of public education, and I'm curious to hear a little bit more about that and what you think about the importance of using literature to really speak up about what is going on in public education right now, and maybe what needs to happen to change public education for the better.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at what's happening with books being banned all over the country. I mean, books it's for a reason. It's because they're very important, right? They're influential. They give kids tools. They give kids knowledge that they can use. And so when you see things like that, we got to counteract it. If they want to ban books, we got to put more out, more important books. You know what I mean? More books that's full of purpose, and more tools. Really, books are tools. And so for me, yeah, I guess that's what it is. It's just trying to spread a message, trying to get my thoughts out there, and this is the way I'm able to do it. So this is what I'm going to do. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lola, and I go to Banneker currently like you did.
Oh, true.
So when you came to my school, I read the book, and I know how you said you wanted to make it real to DC, and I was wondering why you made up a school instead of using one of the high schools here.
just because there was a murder that took place. I didn't want people to conflate. I didn't want to use a real school and then put a fictitious murder. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and then I didn't want anybody to be too upset with me. You know what I mean? Promise Prep gets a bad rap in the book, so I didn't want to step on any toes. But that's why. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Tanisha Tyler. I'm a middle school librarian. So my question is essentially, like, the kids at my school, we can't keep One of Us is Lying. Like, we've bought like 4 copies. We can't keep it on the shelf. And I was just wondering, would you ever write something for middle school? I mean, I know it's a crazy time, and this is for both of you.
Mm-hmm. Maybe. I think I would be more likely to write up and write for adults. It just maybe fits my sensibilities a little bit better. But I love kids that age. And I'm always amazed, actually, at how many of them do read my books. Because when I started writing, One of Us is Lying. I was not expecting 12-year-olds to read it, but they do. And like, so I would consider it, but it's probably not like an immediate priority for me.
Yeah, actually, I have a middle grade series. It's called Nothing Interesting Ever Happens to Ethan Fairmont, which I know is a mouthful.
Such a good title.
But book 1 came out last year in October. Book 2 actually comes out this November. So yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Hello, my name is Logan. I go to Jefferson Middle School. My question is, do you still see yourself writing young teen books in the future?
Yeah, well, I went to Jeff. You know what I'm saying? So again, this is, you know, I went to Jeff, I went to Banneker, so I went to these schools. And 100%, yeah, I definitely want to continue to write books for teens. Yeah.
Yeah, same for me, although it's interesting because like my son just turned 17 and that is creating enormous cognitive dissonance in my brain because I'm like, he's the age of my protagonist and I'm like, you couldn't solve a mystery. You can't even find the milk unless I draw you a map. So I'm struggling a little bit at the moment, but I do think ultimately I will get back there.
Yeah. That's so funny.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Haley, and this is a question for both of you guys, but I was wondering, like, what inspired you to, like, write mystery books instead of, like, a different genre?
Well, for me, it's what I grew up on. It's, you know, it's what attracted me to reading. Again, authors like Walter Mosley was a big inspiration to me. Before that, as a kid, I read like Hardy Boys, you know what I mean? Babysitter's Club, like all of these different things. Nancy Drew. Those were the stories that just captivated me. And so I think it's also the practice, like you were speaking to, like because I read those books naturally. That's what I had a little more of a knack for, I think. But yeah, it was just reading. Those are the books I read, you know, and that's what inspired me to write them.
Yeah. Similar for me, although I also think like mystery kind of chose me because I didn't know what kind of writer I wanted to be. I tried dystopian, didn't do very well. My other book was contemporary fantasy, and then I got the idea for One of Us is Lying, and that was a significantly better idea. And maybe part of that is because I had that foundation of mystery, but it was also the first one where I felt like, you know, I can really see this from start to finish, and I think I can explain it to people in a way that they'll get it quickly.
Okay, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm a teacher outside of Baltimore, and I teach English to 10th graders mostly, but this year I'm teaching creative writing. I have a lot of reluctant readers, and this year I know I'm going to have a lot of reluctant writers. Do you have any advice for getting them to write something?
It can be tricky if they're reluctant readers and writers. One of the things I often suggest to reluctant writers is to almost write fan fiction. You know, if there's something you love, any book that you love, just write in that universe, you know, because you already know it, you already like it. You can put your own spin on it, and it's probably more fun and less pressure than coming up with your own characters in your own world. So that's one thing. And I think ultimately, too, it's just start small, you know, like write a page. It doesn't even have to be a fully fleshed out story with a beginning and an end, just a scene, you know, maybe it's your friends going somewhere, some kind of prompt that you give them that they can relate to.
Yeah, I was just gonna say a prompt that they can relate to, like, I think something like write about an experience you can't stop thinking about. You know, I think from when I was in grad school, that's one of the first writing assignments I had, and it just can't, you know, it just comes out because you know it so well. And I think that was part of the prompt is that you're writing about something you just know so well. So yeah, I would say a prompt that lets them tap into something they know, you know? Yeah.
Thank you.
So this is a question for you, Mrs. Karen McManus. So since I picked up the first book in the Bayview trilogy, One of Us is Lying, and inevitably the second book, One of Us is Next, I've been thinking, with new characters, I've been thinking, does the Bayview Four return as main characters in the third book in the trilogy, One of Us is Back?
So with that book, I combined characters from the first two books. So there are two characters from One of Us is Lying and one character from One of Us is Next. And for the most part, I chose them because of stakes. You know, like who has the most at stake in this particular story. Like I left one character on a pretty big cliffhanger at the end of one of us's neck, so we have to be in her head. Another character is Addie, who has a lot at stake in this story. And then I picked Nate because y'all would kill me if I didn't.
Thank you. I just want to say we are kind of running low on time, so if anybody else has questions, make your way to the mic.
Okay. Okay. Hello, I love both of your works, but I was wondering if you guys have any book recommendations.
Well, I just read Ibi Zeboi's Nigeria Jones, and I thought that was great.
Oh yeah, so many. The young adult thriller space, I think, is just phenomenal. Some of my favorite authors include Tiffany D. Jackson. She and I both debuted in 2017. Her book was Allegedly, still one of my favorites. Kara Thomas writes phenomenal thrillers, and so does Maureen Johnson. She has this Truly Devious trilogy. You know it, okay? Anyone who doesn't, it's so much fun.
Okay, thank you guys so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Anybody else?
This is less of a question and more of my friend. I came from Ohio for this weekend, and my friend's daughter, Maylee, is 14 and a huge fan of yours, Karen's. She has written hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of her own mystery novels.
Amazing.
And they're pretty dark for a 14-year-old. And I know you asked earlier about advice or tips. Do you have any tips, tricks, words of encouragement for her?
Yeah, well, I think it's amazing that she's writing a mystery at age 14 because it is honestly such a tough genre. And if she's just willing to go there and wrestle with the plot, then that says a lot. So yeah, I would just say keep going, have fun with it. Don't worry even a little bit about this is a career yet. You know, she has so much time for that. Just figure out what she likes, you know, share it with the people she trusts, and keep going.
I think one tip that she may have for other young writers is to not Google about stab wounds at school.
Yeah.
Okay. That didn't go well for her, but
oh my goodness.
Thank you so much. She's gonna love this.
Hi. This is for Nick. If you didn't go to a DCPS school, because I go to a DCPS school, what do you think your life would be like?
If I didn't, it's no telling. I mean, I've been speaking a lot about education, but in part DCPS made me who I am. You know what I mean? So, but I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. I don't think I'd change it. I'd say that. I don't think I'd change it. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm McKinley. So this is for both of you. How do you deal with criticism, on your books? Because not everyone's gonna like your books, obviously, so how do you deal with that?
Oh, man. I mean, for me, so I guess there's two, and during the process, sometimes you'll get notes back, right, from editors or whatever, agents, whatever. I don't necessarily see that as criticism. You know, I think that's really constructive. Everybody's trying to make the best product. And then on the other side of it, to be honest, I haven't really read, I don't really read, critic stuff. I mean, this is my second book. My first YA just came out at the end of January, so I'm, some months in. I don't think I've really looked at any critic reviews or anything like that. So I guess that's the way I deal with it.
Yeah.
I just don't look at it.
100%. I firmly believe reviews are for readers.
Yeah.
They're not for us.
Yeah.
They're not going to help us, and sometimes if it's negative, it can take up too much space in your head that, thousands of positive reviews will not do. It's just, unfortunately, the way brains work sometimes. So similarly, I take critique from my editor, from my agent, from a trusted circle of writers, from the readers assigned to my book. And beyond that, I hope people like it, and I'm always excited when they share that they do, and if they don't, that is okay. You don't have to tell me. If you do tell me, I'm not gonna listen.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it looks like that's all the questions we have from the audience. I have one more I'd just like to ask you. You've each mentioned like book recommendations, current recommendations, but would each of you share a writer who's particularly influenced you in your work?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tricky one, only because, let me see, let me think. I guess some writers I really look up to is like somebody like Jason Reynolds, you know, somebody that like I would admire, like, oh, I love the work that they do. I love the voice that they have and what they bring to the page. And I think, again, it's that DC connection too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
When I was first trying to figure out what kind of writer I wanted to be, and I was trying different genres, and people told me, oh, your voice is very contemporary, you should try contemporary. And I honestly hadn't read much. I was mostly reading fantasy. And I was like, well, I should probably read some contemporary. And I read 2 books. One was by Becky Albertalli, you know, Simon Versus, and the other was by Courtney Summers, cracked up to be very different. You know, it's like sweet and romantic and, you know, dark and angry. But they both had such clear voices, such strong points of view. And I remember thinking, okay, yes, I can see where I could maybe fit in this space.
Thank you for sharing that. Well, Nick and Karen, thank you for diving into your books with us today and into your process with us today. I think I could speak for everybody in the room when I say we're really looking forward to more of your work that keeps us guessing and on the edge of our seats. Audience, would you please help me thank Karen and Nick?
Thank you.